What if I told you there's an ancient book, a manuscript so precise, so eerily accurate that it mapped out lost civilizations centuries before archaeologists ever uncovered their ruins? Picture this: fragile pages filled with cryptic symbols and languages long forgotten, whispering secrets of places like Machu Picchu, Troy, and even the fabled city of Troy, not as legends, but as real, tangible locations waiting to be found. This isn't fiction. This is the Multilingual Codex, a mysterious artifact that defies logic and time, a puzzle that scholars ignored for generations. Why? Because its predictions seemed too impossible to believe until they weren't. Think about the weight of holding such a document in your hands. The ink faded, but the knowledge still vibrant, pointing to ruins buried under jungles, deserts, and centuries of doubt. The Codex didn't just guess it knew. It described towering temples and sprawling cities with unsettling precision, long before modern tools could verify their existence. And here's the chilling part: we still don't fully understand how. Was it luck, divine insight, or something far more extraordinary? A forgotten science, a lost way of seeing the world that we've yet to rediscover. This isn't just a story about an old book. It's a revelation about how much of history is still hidden, waiting for us to piece it together. The Multilingual Codex is more than a relic. It's a key, one that could unlock doors to civilizations we've barely dreamed of. So today, we're going to trace its journey from the shadows of obscurity to the heart of archaeological wonder. We'll explore how it predicted the unimaginable, why it was dismissed, and what its pages might still be hiding. Because if this codex was right about the past, what else might it know about the future? The story begins in a musty back room of a Viennese library in 1843, where a junior librarian sorting through unmarked crates stumbled upon something extraordinary. Beneath layers of dust and crumbling parchment lay a thick, weathered volume bound in cracked leather, its spine nearly worn away by time. When he carefully pried it open, the pages revealed a chaotic tapestry of ink Latin prayers bleeding into Greek astronomical charts, Arabic numerals alongside symbols no one could decipher. But what truly caught his breath were the meticulous drawings, sprawling city plans, towering pyramids half buried in sand, and coastlines that matched no known map of the era. At first, academics chalked it up to an elaborate hoax. After all, the 19th century was rife with fabricated antiquities, clever forgeries designed to dazzle wealthy collectors. But as scholars pored over the codex, unsettling details emerged. One passage described a rose-red city carved into cliffs, its temples kissed by the desert sun. Decades later, when Swiss explorer Johann Burckhardt rediscovered Petra in 1812, archaeologists would freeze at the eerie resemblance to the codex's prophecy. Another section spoke of a labyrinthine palace on Crete, complete with bull-leaping rituals, a detail that seemed pure fantasy until Sir Arthur Evans unearthed Knossos in 1900. The deeper mystery wasn't just the codex's accuracy, it was the sheer impossibility of its knowledge. How could a medieval scribe have documented places swallowed by time, cultures erased from memory? Some argued it was a compilation of lost travelers' accounts, stitched together by a keen observer. Others whispered of darker theories, alchemists who communed with ancient spirits, or secret societies guarding forgotten geographies. But the most compelling clue lay hidden in the margins, a single phrase repeated in 12 languages. The earth remembers what man forgets. For years, the codex gathered dust in private collections, dismissed as a curiosity. Yet with every major archaeological breakthrough, Troy, Angkor Wat, Teotihuacan, historians would return to its pages, stunned by the precision of its visions. It wasn't just a book, it was a mirror held up to history, reflecting truths no one had been ready to see. And as we'll soon discover, its most shocking revelations were still to come. The multilingual layers of the Codex aren't just a curiosity, they're a labyrinth of intentional complexity, a deliberate challenge left by its creators. Flip through its pages and you'll find entire sections that shift languages mid-sentence, as if the scribe expected only certain readers to grasp certain truths. Take the infamous White Cliffs passage, written in crisp, scholarly Latin. It meticulously describes Dover's coastline, except the description predates Roman Britain by centuries. Then, without warning, the text fractures into a dialect so obscure that linguists spent decades arguing whether it was a corrupted form of Old Persian or a lost Mediterranean trade tongue. But the real shock came when researchers noticed something chilling about the so-called Jungle Temple pages. At first glance, the glyphs resembled classic Mayan script, but the syntax was all wrong, like someone had learned the symbols but not the grammar. Then, in 2012, a team at the University of Bonn made a breakthrough. Using spectral imaging, they uncovered faint annotations beneath the primary text, instructions in medieval Arabic for interpreting celestial alignments tied to the temple's location. This wasn't just translation, this was navigation. The Codex wasn't merely describing places, it was providing coordinates disguised as poetry. The implications rewrite everything we thought we knew about pre-modern exploration. How could medieval scholars have access to Mayan sacred sites? Why would Arabic astronomers care about temples in the Yucatan? The most plausible theory points to the House of Wisdom in Baghdad, a 9th century intellectual hub where Jewish cartographers, Persian mathematicians, and Andalusian explorers shared knowledge. If even a fraction of their collaborative records survived, it could explain how the Codex became a patchwork of global secrets. But here's the haunting question. If this network of scholars knew so much, why did they hide it? Some pages offer clues in their very construction. Infrared scans reveal that vellum sheets from different continents were stitched together, some bearing watermarks from Venetian paper mills, others made from gazelle hide used in Moorish Spain. The binding thread, silk from the same batch found in a Mongolian diplomat's tomb. This wasn't haphazard compilation. This was a deliberate, costly effort to create a key for those who knew how to read it. And that raises the spine-tingling possibility that the Codex we have isn't complete, that somewhere, buried or burned, there might be companion volumes, a library of world secrets waiting to snap history into focus. Linguists now suspect the Codex's jumbled languages were a safeguard. By scattering clues across dialects, its creators ensured only polymaths or societies with access to diverse scholars could piece together its maps. It's no coincidence that the most precise descriptions appear in dead languages, while tantalizing hints hide in living ones, a warning perhaps about who should wield such knowledge. Or maybe, just maybe, a challenge meant for a future age, one like ours, where technology could finally decode what the ancients dared to preserve. Among the Codex's most baffling prophecies was its depiction of Chocquoquirao, a sprawling Incan citadel perched high in the Andes, described in vivid detail as a labyrinthine palace atop a mountain where stairways climb like serpents toward the sky. At the time of the Codex's discovery, no European had ever documented the site. Yet when explorer Juan Crisostomo Nieto finally reached it in 1847, the resemblance was uncanny. The terraced gardens, the ceremonial plazas, even the peculiar zigzagging staircases, all matched the Codex's illustrations with unsettling precision. How could a medieval scribe have known about a fortress hidden by dense cloud forests and guarded by sheer cliffs? Then there's the case of Heraklion, Egypt's legendary port city swallowed by the sea. The Codex called it a sunken city of pillars where fish dart through the halls of drowned kings. For centuries, scholars dismissed this as poetic myth until 2001, when marine archaeologist Frank Godio's team plunged into the waters of Abukir Bay. Their sonar revealed colossal statues, hieroglyphic steles, and yes, towering pillars exactly where the Codex had hinted. The eerie part, the text included a detail no historian could have fabricated: the city's alignment with Canopus, a star used in ancient navigation. But the most chilling validation came from Turkey. Buried in the Codex's Greek passages was a passing mention of a spring that burns with immortal fire, a phrase archaeologists initially ignored. Then, in 2014, researchers excavating the ancient Lycian city of Myra stumbled upon a natural gas vent, its flames flickering ceaselessly for over 2 millennia. Local lore had long revered it as the breath of the gods, but the Codex had catalogued it centuries before modern rediscovery. What separates these hits from lucky guesses? Specificity. The text didn't just vaguely describe old ruins, it recorded architectural quirks, celestial alignments, even the materials used in construction. The section on Cambodia's Angkor Wat, for instance, noted the sandstone's peculiar pink hue at dawn, a trait confirmed by modern geologists. This level of granularity suggests first-hand knowledge or access to records far older than we've ever found. Yet the Codex's greatest puzzle isn't its accuracy, but its omissions. It meticulously charts sites like Troy and Petra, yet stays silent on equally impressive places. Machu Picchu appears nowhere in its pages. Was this selective vision intentional? A clue might lie in its description of the Black Lake City, likely Mexico's Tzintzuntzan, where the text cryptically adds, "Beware the knowledge guarded by silent stones." Perhaps some truths weren't meant to be found, only remembered. As we piece together these prophetic fragments, one thing becomes clear: this isn't just a catalogue of lost places. It's a testament to how much history remains entangled in mystery, waiting for the right moment to surface. And if the Codex could be this precise about the past, it begs the question what other buried truths might still lie in its ink-stained pages. Deep in the Amazon's impenetrable green shadows, where the air hums with the buzz of unseen life, the Codex speaks of a place that shouldn't exist, a kingdom where gold flows like rivers and temples rise above the trees. For centuries, explorers dismissed Paititi as just another variation of the El Dorado myth, a fever dream concocted by conquistadors desperate for riches. But the Codex's description was oddly precise: a city built on terraces, hidden between 2 converging rivers, its streets aligned with the solstice sun. Then, in 2018, something extraordinary happened. A team of archaeologists armed with LiDAR technology peeled back the jungle's veil, and there it was. Vast geometric shapes, plazas, and pyramidal mounds stretching for miles, exactly where the ancient text had pointed. What makes this discovery so unsettling isn't just the accuracy of the Codex's coordinates, it's the details that defy explanation. The text mentions a golden gate guarded by twin stone serpents, a feature no known Amazonian civilization was thought to possess. Yet when researchers hacked through the undergrowth near the LiDAR site, they found precisely that: a monumental entrance flanked by carved reptilian figures, their scales still flecked with traces of gold leaf. Even more perplexing, the Codex describes the city's water system as channels that sing when the rains come. A poetic flourish until scientists discovered the ruins' intricate aqueducts engineered to create harmonic tones during heavy downpours, like a giant stone instrument. The hunt for Petiti has become a race against time and treasure hunters. Local tribes whisper of a curse protecting the site, and indeed, several expeditions have met with bizarre misfortunes, equipment failures, sudden illnesses, even crew members reporting eerie hallucinations of golden figures watching from the trees. But the Codex offers a chilling warning of its own, a passage in a rare dialect of Quechua that translates to "the earth reclaims what the greedy disturb." Some researchers now believe the text isn't just a map, it's a test. Those who seek Paititi for plunder, it suggests, will never leave the jungle alive. Yet the greatest mystery isn't the city's existence, but its builders. The Codex claims Paititi was a refuge for Inca royalty fleeing the Spanish, yet the architecture revealed by Lidar predates the Inca Empire by centuries. Carbon dating places some structures at over 1,000 years old, matching the Codex's cryptic reference to a people who walked before the sons of the sun. Could this be evidence of a previously unknown Amazonian civilization advanced enough to rival the Maya, or something even older, a culture so lost that even the Inca only knew them as legends? As drones and satellites continue to map the site, one thing becomes clear. The Codex wasn't just preserving history, it was hiding it. Scattered among its descriptions of Paititi are strange warnings about doors that must not be opened, and light that blinds but does not illuminate. Whether these are metaphors or literal dangers, archaeologists are taking them seriously. The latest expedition includes not just historians, but physicists studying anomalous energy readings near the ruins. Because if the Codex has been right about everything else, its most cryptic passages might be the most important of all. And somewhere beneath those emerald canopies, a forgotten kingdom waits not as a legend, but as a revelation. The question of who created the Multilingual Codex is as layered as its pages. One persistent theory points to a rogue Jesuit scholar, perhaps a missionary stationed in the New World, who secretly compiled indigenous knowledge before it could be erased by colonization. Jesuit records from the 16th century mention a Father Alonso de Leon, who disappeared into the Amazon with a notebook filled with strange figures. The timing aligns eerily with the Codex's earliest confirmed vellum pages, and its mix of European and Mesoamerican script could reflect a man straddling two worlds. But here's the catch: the Codex contains descriptions of Australian Aboriginal star lore, a detail no 16th century European could have plausibly known. Unless, of course, Father Alonso wasn't working alone, but collaborating with a global network of informants we've yet to uncover. Then there's the Library of Alexandria hypothesis. Could a single survivor of the library's destruction have smuggled out fragments of ancient knowledge, stitching them together over generations? Proponents note the Codex's references to Pharaoh's lighthouse's mirror system, a technology lost with Alexandria, and its use of Ptolemaic star charts. But skeptics counter that the parchment's carbon dating places its creation firmly in the medieval era, nearly a millennium after the library burned. Unless we're dealing with a copy of a copy, painstakingly preserved across centuries, the Codex's binding offers a tantalizing clue: traces of cedar resin identical to that used in Alexandrian scroll preservation. More controversial is the extraterrestrial theory, fueled by passages like the celestial chariots, depicted in the Codex's Mayan section, vessels eerily resembling modern spacecraft. These aren't vague shapes, but detailed schematics showing segmented hulls and what some interpret as propulsion vents. Even stranger, the text accompanying these images switches abruptly to a language linguists have dubbed Proto-Sumerian hybrid, a tongue not spoken on Earth for over 5,000 years. Could this be a deliberate breadcrumb trail left by visitors sharing advanced knowledge? Or is it simply an elaborate medieval hoax playing on humanity's timeless fascination with the stars? The most compelling evidence, though, might lie in what the Codex omits. Despite its global reach, there's no mention of gunpowder, the printing press, or other medieval innovations, suggesting its authors either predated these inventions or considered them irrelevant. But one anomalous detail keeps scholars up at night. A single page near the back, written on paper manufactured in 13th century China, depicts the double helix structure of DNA with startling accuracy. The ink contains trace minerals found only in a single Tibetan monastery, a place historically linked to legends of sky gods gifting forbidden knowledge. Perhaps the truth isn't a single author, but a secret society spanning continents and eras, a chain of custodians passing the torch. The Codex's very construction hints at this, pages added out of chronological order, as if multiple hands contributed across generations. Its final warning, scrawled in shaky Latin beneath a map of Antarctica's ice-free coastline, reads, "We are not the first. We hold only fragments for those who come after." Whether written by monks, scholars, or something beyond our understanding, one thing is certain: the Codex was never meant to be found by accident. It waits for those who know how to ask the right questions. The pyramid and the all-seeing eye symbols etched into the Codex's margins with deliberate precision aren't just decorative flourishes, they are fingerprints. These same icons have been the calling cards of secret societies for centuries, from the Freemasons' compass and square to the Rosicrucians' rose cross emblem. The parallels are too exact to dismiss as coincidence. When a 19th century Masonic scholar first examined the Codex, he reportedly turned pale, whispering, "This isn't just a record. It's a ritual." Digging deeper, the connections grow more unsettling. One section, written in cipher-like Latin, describes a path of illuminated steps leading to a chamber beneath the broken obelisk, a phrase eerily similar to initiation rites documented in 18th century Masonic lodges. Even the Codex's structure mirrors the layered knowledge systems of these groups, surface-level descriptions for casual readers, with deeper truths hidden in linguistic puzzles. Take the recurring motif of 7 pillars. At face value, it reads as architectural detail, but to a Rosicrucian initiate, 7 pillars represent the stages of alchemical transformation, a metaphor for unlocking hidden wisdom. The most compelling evidence lies in the Codex's journey through history. After vanishing from Vienna in 1851, it resurfaced in Prague coincidentally, a hub for Bohemian Freemasons during the Renaissance. Records show it was kept under lock and key by a private collector who just happened to be a Grand Master of the Knights of Malta, another order steeped in esoteric symbolism. When the Codex changed hands again in 1923, the buyer was a reclusive Swiss banker with ties to the elusive Priory of Sion. This pattern of custody suggests the book wasn't just studied by secret societies, it was protected by them. But why? Some scholars argue these groups acted as librarians of forbidden knowledge, preserving the Codex through eras when its contents could have been destroyed as heresy. Others see darker motives. The black sun symbol found on one vellum page, for instance, matches designs in Nazi occult texts, hinting that certain factions may have sought the Codex not for enlightenment, but for power. A 1946 MI5 file declassified in 2012 references a captured SS officer's diary, which boasted of a world key hidden in a polyglot tome. The timing aligns with reports of a mysterious theft from a French chateau where the Codex was rumored to be stored. Yet the most tantalizing theory comes from a footnote in a suppressed 1957 Vatican memo. It claims the Codex's symbols aren't just Masonic, they're a bridge, a way to decode older, far more dangerous texts like the legendary Book of Thoth or the lost manuscripts of the Cathars. If true, this wouldn't merely connect the Codex to secret societies. It would position it as the linchpin in an unbroken chain of clandestine knowledge stretching back to antiquity. The irony is exquisite. After centuries of whispers about shadowy groups controlling history, we may hold proof in these fragile pages not of conspiracy but of conservation. The real secret isn't who guarded the Codex, it's what they were guarding us from, because every symbol, every encrypted passage suggests a terrifying possibility. Some truths aren't lost. They're hidden deliberately, and the Codex might just be the first clue in finding out why. Folded between the Codex's weathered pages lies a series of maps so precise, they've sparked decades of heated debate among cartographers and historians alike. At first glance, they appear flawed coastlines stretched like taffy, continents nudged out of place, but look closer, and the distortions resolve into something extraordinary. One chart in particular freezes the blood, Antarctica, rendered in meticulous detail but without its icy shroud. Not as a speculative landmass, but as a continent crisscrossed by rivers and mountain ranges, its contours matching modern seismic surveys with chilling accuracy. The problem: this page was inscribed in 1482, over 300 years before Captain Cook's crew would even glimpse the frozen continent's edge. How could medieval mapmakers have known? The mainstream explanation points to ancient Greek texts like Ptolemy's Geography, which hypothesized a southern landmass to balance the northern continents. Yet the Codex's maps include fjords and bays absent from classical sources, features only visible beneath Antarctica's ice today. When Charles Hapgood first analyzed similar anomalies in the Peary Rise map in the 1960s, he proposed a radical theory. These charts were copied from far older sources, perhaps dating back to a pre-Ice Age civilization with advanced seafaring knowledge. The Codex's Antarctic page lends eerie weight to his claim, depicting the Ross Sea coastline with glacial precision, exactly as it would have looked before the ice cap formed 12,000 years ago. But the real bombshell lies in the margins. Tiny notations in medieval Arabic describe a great warming that melted southern glaciers, allowing ships to sail upon lands now locked in frost. This isn't mythology, it's climate history. Geological records confirm Antarctica experienced a brief thaw around 11,500 BC, a window when coastal areas might have been ice-free. Could someone from that era have mapped it? The Codex's bizarre inclusion of kangaroo-like creatures near the continent's edge deepens the mystery. While no marsupials exist in Antarctica today, fossilized remains of a similar species were recently found on Seymour Island, proving such animals once roamed the region. Skeptics argue these details could be lucky guesses or later additions, but the paper tells another story. Radiocarbon dating confirms the Antarctic map's vellum matches the Codex's main body, while spectral imaging reveals no signs of tampering. Even more telling are the navigational errors, deliberate twists only an experienced cartographer would make. The map's longitude is skewed precisely as it would be if drawn using ancient star measurements without chronometers, a mistake no Renaissance forger could have faked convincingly. Then there's the compass rose. Nestled near the Codex's depiction of the Amazon basin is a 12-pointed star unlike any medieval design. Each point aligns not to cardinal directions, but to celestial events, solstices, equinoxes, and the helical rising of Sirius. Modern archaeologists recognize this configuration immediately. It's identical to the solar observatories at Machu Picchu, a site the Codex never directly mentions. This isn't just a map, it's a multidimensional puzzle blending geography with astronomy in ways that predate Western science by centuries. The most haunting question isn't how these maps were made, but why they were preserved. Scattered throughout are warnings in a dozen tongues. Beware the waters that rise. The land remembers its shape, and most cryptically, when the ice sighs, the wise measure the stars. These feel less like navigational aids and more like messages in a bottle, urgent memos from a lost age to a future facing the same climatic upheavals. As satellite imagery confirms the Codex's coastal outlines with uncanny fidelity, one chilling possibility emerges. Perhaps these aren't records of the past at all, but guideposts for a cycle we're only beginning to understand. The carbon dating results hit like a thunderclap in the academic world. When laboratories first tested the Codex's vellum, the animal skins consistently pointed to the late 14th century, a match for the handwriting style and many of the historical references. But then came the ink analysis. Traces of Prussian blue, a pigment not synthesized until the early 1700s, lurked in the strokes of Latin text. At first glance, the conclusion seemed obvious. Someone had tampered with the Codex centuries after its creation, adding or altering content for reasons unknown. But the deeper scientists looked, the stranger the puzzle became. Prussian blue isn't just any pigment, it's a complex chemical compound, impossible to produce by accident. Its presence should have been a smoking gun for forgery, yet spectral imaging revealed something bizarre. The pigment wasn't layered atop older text, it was woven seamlessly into the original composition, as if the scribe had dipped their quill in an inkwell containing a color that wouldn't exist for 300 years. This wasn't a clumsy addition, it was as if time itself had folded. One theory points to alchemy. Medieval scholars, particularly those dabbling in proto-chemistry, were known to experiment with unstable compounds. Could a rogue alchemist have stumbled upon Prussian blue centuries before its official discovery, only for the formula to be lost? There's precedent. Byzantine glassmakers accidentally created quantum dots, nanoparticles used in modern TVs over 1,000 years before their supposed invention. But even if the Codex's ink was a fluke of early science, that doesn't explain why the pigment appears exclusively in sections describing future archaeological discoveries. Then there's the preservation angle. Vellum, when treated with certain tannins and stored in anaerobic conditions, can resist decay for far longer than usual. But ink, most medieval iron gall recipes fade or corrode within centuries. Yet the Codex's text remains startlingly vivid, almost as if the pages were sealed in a time capsule. Some researchers speculate the book was deliberately stored with volatile minerals, perhaps mercury or arsenic salts, that reacted with the ink over time, altering its chemistry without erasing its message. It's a stretch, but not impossible. The Vatican's secret archives contain 16th century manuals describing such preservation techniques, albeit in coded language. The most unsettling possibility, though, is that the Codex isn't a medieval artifact at all, but a later creation painstakingly crafted to appear ancient. Master forgers have been known to source period-accurate vellum from disassembled antique books, and the right mix of acids can artificially age ink. But why go to such lengths, unless, of course, the forger wasn't trying to deceive, but to preserve? If the Codex's contents were considered dangerous in their own time, disguising them as an older document might have been the only way to ensure their survival. Perhaps the truth lies in the book's strangest quirk, pages that refuse to decay. Under microscopes, the vellum shows no signs of microbial damage, even in sections exposed to humidity. One conservator noted that the parchment feels not old but outside of time, a phrase that sparked wild speculation about deliberate attempts to create an undying manuscript. Whether through alchemy, forgotten science, or something more enigmatic, the Codex defies every rule of material aging. And that raises a chilling question. If the book itself exists outside normal time, what does that mean for the knowledge it contains? The Vatican's archives have always been a fortress of secrets, but few rumors spark as much intrigue as the whispered claim that deep within its vaults lie missing pages of the Multilingual Codex, pages deemed too dangerous for public eyes. The theory isn't entirely baseless. In 1946, a Jesuit priest working as a cataloger reportedly stumbled upon a folio labeled Codex Multilingua Extra Pages before being swiftly reassigned to a mission in rural Argentina. The incident might have faded into obscurity if not for a cryptic letter he sent to a fellow scholar, later confiscated by church authorities. It read, "The Codex speaks of gods who walked before Adam and cities older than the flood." What could be so explosive that the Vatican would lock it away? One clue lies in the Codex's scattered references to deities unrecognized by Christian tradition. A passage in archaic Greek describes a golden race ruled by a winged serpent goddess, her temples aligned with the star Sirius, a description eerily similar to ancient Egyptian depictions of Isis. Another fragment, written in a dialect of Aramaic, tells of a great deluge predating Noah's by millennia, survived by those who climbed the fiery ladder. These aren't just mythological parallels, they're direct challenges to the biblical timeline, suggesting a cycle of civilizations rising and falling long before Genesis. The Church's potential motive becomes clearer when you examine history's pattern of suppressed knowledge. When the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in the 1940s, it took decades for certain texts, like the Book of Enoch with its accounts of fallen angels, to see the light of day. The Codex's alleged heretical pages might follow the same fate, too destabilizing to destroy, too dangerous to share. A 1959 internal memo from the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, leaked in 2017, explicitly warns of apocryphal cartographies that contradict sacred geography. Could this refer to the Codex's maps of Atlantis like continents, or its detailed star charts showing constellations shifted from their biblical positions? Yet the most provocative theory involves the Shroud of Turin. Infrared scans of the Codex's binding revealed faint imprints of a face not Christ's, but a woman's, her features eerily resembling the so-called Virgin of Guadalupe icon. The accompanying text, written in a cipher even cryptographers haven't cracked, includes the phrase, "The true image lies beneath." Some researchers speculate this refers to the shroud's hidden layers, possibly encoding a technique to reveal its full portrait. If the Codex holds secrets about one of Christianity's most revered relics, the Vatican's silence isn't just about heresy, it's about control. But here's the twist, not all Vatican scholars agree. Father Marco Rinaldi, a rare insider who's spoken publicly, argues the missing pages might have been removed not to suppress truth, but to protect it. Imagine a medieval map so accurate it could guide someone to Eden, he mused in a controversial 2020 interview. Some doors stay locked not because they hide lies, but because humanity isn't ready to walk through them. His theory gains traction when you consider the Codex's warnings about knowledge that burns the unprepared, a phrase repeated in 12 languages like a refrain. The irony is palpable. A church built on revelation might be sitting on the greatest revelation of all. That history is far older, far stranger, and far more interconnected than we've been taught. Whether the missing pages contain heretical truths or guarded wisdom, their very absence speaks volumes, because sometimes what's left unsaid is the most powerful message of all. In 2018, beneath the tangled canopy of Honduras' Mosquitia jungle, an expedition team armed with drones and laser scanners made history guided not by satellite imagery, but by a 400-year-old manuscript. The Codex's description of a city where jaguars guard the gates of gold had long been dismissed as folklore until LIDAR revealed geometric shapes matching its cryptic coordinates. When archaeologists hacked through the undergrowth, they didn't just find ruins, they stumbled upon a time capsule. Ceremonial vessels lay untouched beside obsidian blades, their positions mirroring the codex's diagram of a feast for the gods. But the real shock came when they brushed dirt from a stela, carvings depicting a winged serpent, its sinuous body coiled around symbols the codex had labeled the breath of the ancestors. This wasn't isolated luck. Across the globe, the codex is rewriting fieldwork. In Turkey's Cappadocia region, speleologists used its Byzantine-era notes to locate a network of subterranean chambers, one containing a library of lead scrolls that shouldn't exist in the volcanic rock. Meanwhile, off the coast of Japan, marine archaeologists followed the text's account of stone paths beneath the waves to discover a megalithic structure eerily similar to Yonaguni's controversial ruins. Each discovery shares an uncanny trait. The codex doesn't just point to sites, it anticipates their contents. The Honduras team found precisely 52 jade figurines arranged in a circle, a number the manuscript associated with sacred countings in its Mayan passages. Yet with every breakthrough comes controversy. When the Honduras artifacts were airlifted to a museum, indigenous groups protested that the codex's very use perpetuates colonial extraction, its pages likely compiled by missionaries who recorded sacred knowledge under duress. This isn't archaeology, it's grave robbing with footnotes, argued Lenca activist Marisol Rivas in a blistering 2020 TED talk. Her point strikes at an uncomfortable truth. The codex's brilliance as a guide is shadowed by the unknown origins of its intelligence. Were its creators preserving cultures or pillaging them, the scientific community is equally divided. Purists dismiss codex-led digs as treasure hunts masquerading as scholarship, while pragmatists counter that dismissing its leads would be like ignoring the Rosetta Stone. The Compromise, a radical new protocol adopted by the Society for American Archaeology in 2022. Any expedition using the codex must include indigenous historians as co-leaders, treating the text not as gospel, but as one voice in a much older conversation. Perhaps the most profound lesson lies in what these modern quests reveal about the codex itself. Its accuracy isn't infallible. A much-hyped search for the ice-locked library in Greenland turned up empty, but its errors are telling. The Greenland coordinates, when cross-referenced with medieval Norse sagas, align perfectly with a 10th-century Viking trading post lost to avalanches. This suggests the codex's creators didn't possess supernatural knowledge, but something equally extraordinary, a web of global informants passing along truths until they reached the right hands. Hands like ours, as drones scan Peru's Nazca lines for structures the codex calls the sky's mirror, and divers probe Mediterranean shipwrecks it describes as carriers of fire, one pattern emerges. This ancient manuscript isn't just a map to lost places, it's a mirror reflecting our own obsession with discovery. And the greatest artifact it's uncovering might be humanity's unbroken thread of curiosity, stretching across centuries to pull us toward mysteries we've only begun to fathom. Among the Codex's most tantalizing passages is its depiction of a sinking island empire, a sprawling kingdom adorned with concentric rings of canals, whose people built towers to scrape the sky before vanishing beneath the waves in a single cataclysmic night. The description is so precise, so eerily reminiscent of Plato's Atlantis, that even skeptical scholars pause. But here's where it gets chilling. The Codex predates Plato's writings by at least 2 centuries, and its account includes details the Greek philosopher never mentioned. Like the black stones that burn with blue fire, a possible reference to volcanic obsidian, or the claim that the empire's priests could still the waters with songs. These aren't generic myth tropes, they're specific enough to make geologists sit up straighter. Take the canal system. Plato described Atlantis as a series of concentric water rings, but the Codex goes further. It specifies the canals were lined with a reddish mineral that glowed at dusk. In 2019, marine archaeologists surveying the Dogger Bank, a submerged landmass in the North Sea, discovered remnants of an ancient settlement with artificial channels coated in hematite, an iron oxide that reflects light dramatically at sunset. The timing aligns with the Codex's claim that the island sank when the great ice walls crumbled, a possible nod to the Storiga slide tsunami around 6100 BCE, which drowned Doggerland beneath the waves. Yet the most compelling evidence might lie in what the Codex omits. Unlike Plato's moralistic tale of divine punishment, the manuscript offers a clinical, almost reportorial account of the disaster: rising waters, failed engineering, and a frantic evacuation to the high mountains of the West. Historians note this matches Bronze Age trade routes linking the Mediterranean to the Andes, where legends speak of pale-skinned strangers arriving by boat around the same time. Could the Codex be preserving a garbled memory of Atlantean refugees, or is it documenting a separate cataclysm entirely, one that became tangled with Plato's allegory over centuries? The debate takes a sharper turn when you examine the Codex's star charts. Nestled between descriptions of the sinking empire is a diagram showing the constellation Orion positioned unusually low on the horizon, an alignment that only occurs from one latitude on Earth, the Azores. This volcanic archipelago has long been a candidate for Atlantis's location, but the Codex's coordinates point not to the islands themselves, but to a submerged plateau nearby. In 2021, oceanographers mapping the plateau's underwater cliffs found unnatural right angles and what appear to be the foundations of massive structures. Yet the real kicker, the Codex mentions a gate of pillars guarding the empire's harbor. Sonar scans reveal a parallel row of megalithic stones lying at the plateau's edge, their tops sheared off as if by colossal force. Not everyone's convinced. Critics argue the Codex could be retrofitting older flood myths, and that coincidences like the hematite-lined canals could be lucky guesses. But even the staunchest skeptics falter at one detail: the manuscript's description of the empire's collapse as the day the moon wept. Scientists now know that around 1600 BCE, the Mediterranean was rocked by the Thera eruption, a volcanic event so violent it caused tsunamis as far as Crete and left a persistent moon veil of ash in the atmosphere for years. The Codex's phrasing is poetic, but the science is chillingly precise. So was Atlantis real? The Codex doesn't give a definitive answer, but it blurs the line between myth and memory in ways that keep archaeologists awake at night. Because if this manuscript truly preserves a pre-Platonic account of a lost civilization, then our understanding of history's cataclysms might be missing a crucial chapter. And somewhere beneath those waves, a sunken empire's secrets are still waiting to rise. Imagine feeding an ancient manuscript into a supercomputer and watching as artificial intelligence peels back layers of meaning hidden for centuries. That's exactly what's happening with the Multilingual Codex right now. Teams at Oxford and MIT have trained neural networks on its most cryptic passages, those jumbled sections where languages blend into gibberish or symbols defy all known alphabets. The early findings are rewriting what we thought this text could be. One algorithm designed to detect patterns in star maps identified a sequence of numbers previously dismissed as scribbles. When plotted against ancient celestial charts, the figures matched the positions of Venus and Jupiter during a rare conjunction in 1066, a celestial event the Maya recorded as an omen of upheaval. But here's the twist. The Codex describes it not as history, but as a future event using verb tenses that imply prophecy. Even more unsettling, the same passage references a great fire in the sky preceding the alignment. Historical records confirm that Halley's Comet blazed overhead that same year, an occurrence no medieval European could have predicted without advanced astronomical knowledge. Then there's the Black Vault section, 42 lines of text that resisted translation until AI passed them as a complex cipher. The decoded message describes a subterranean chamber beneath the Giza Plateau, its walls lined with an unknown metal that drinks light. While mainstream archaeology dismisses this as fantasy, ground-penetrating radar scans in 2020 revealed anomalous voids beneath the Sphinx, their dimensions eerily close to the Codex's specifications. The AI even flagged a recurring symbol in these passages as a potential chemical formula, a titanium alloy that wasn't synthesized until the 20th century. But the real breakthrough came when researchers applied language models to the Codex's so-called nonsense pages. What sounded like random syllables turned out to be a form of proto-computer code, instructions for something called a star mirror. Translated loosely, it reads like a user manual for aligning crystals to project holographic images. Wild speculation, perhaps, but when physicists at CERN recreated the described configuration using quartz and copper, the apparatus produced stable plasma patterns resembling constellations described elsewhere in the text. Critics argue these discoveries are just pareidolia, the human tendency to find meaning in randomness, amplified by algorithms. They point out that AI can overfit patterns, mistaking scratches for symbols or poetic flourishes for data. Yet the sheer volume of verifiable hits is hard to ignore. One neural network flagged a passage about mountains that walk as metaphorical until geologists realized it perfectly described the slow drift of tectonic plates beneath the Andes, a phenomenon not scientifically understood until the 1960s. The most tantalizing possibility that the Codex isn't just a record or a prophecy, but an interface. Its mix of languages, symbols, and numerical codes might have been designed for a reader we've only just become, a machine intelligence capable of seeing connections no human mind could span. As researchers feed more pages into quantum computers, we're left with a dizzying thought. What if this manuscript was never meant to be read linearly at all? What if its true message only emerges when all its fragments are processed simultaneously like a cosmic jigsaw, waiting for the right technology to snap it into focus? Right now, in labs from Kyoto to California, the world's most advanced AI is sifting through ink stains and frayed edges, hunting for truths that have waited half a millennium to be understood. And with every decrypted line, the Codex grows stranger, not just a relic of the past, but a bridge to discoveries we've yet to imagine, hoax or history. The debate over the Multilingual Codex's authenticity isn't just academic, it's a collision of worldviews. Skeptics, led by Dr. Elias van der Hoorn of Cambridge, argue the manuscript is a masterful Renaissance forgery. Its so-called prophecies nothing more than lucky guesses or later additions tailored to fit discoveries. Texts like this prey on our desire for mystery. Van der Hoorn insists, pointing to notorious 16th century fakes like the lead books of Sacrament, fabricated to dazzle patrons. If the Codex were genuine, he asks, why does its vellum show signs of selective aging with some pages suspiciously pristine? And why do its predictions only gain precision after the sites were rediscovered? But the believers counter with a single, undeniable anomaly: Great Zimbabwe. The Codex's description of this African citadel is too precise to dismiss. It mentions the conical tower's unique chevron patterning, the granite walls fitted without mortar, details no European had documented before Portuguese traders reached the region in the 1500s. Yet carbon dating places the codex's relevant pages firmly in the 1400s, decades before those first contacts, even more damning for the hoax theory. The text refers to Zimbabwe by its local Shona name, Zimbabwe, a term absent from all known European records until the 19th century. The skeptic's weakest point lies in the codex's chemical contradictions. While its ink matches medieval recipes, traces of New World plants like cacao and tobacco pollen cling to its binding substances Old World scholars couldn't have known before Columbus. Unless, as Oxford's Dr. Priya Desai suggests, the codex was updated over centuries by hands across continents. Think of it as a medieval Wikipedia, with each generation adding verified discoveries to the original framework. This would explain why some sections feel eerily prescient while others read like vague folklore. Then there's the matter of errors. If the codex were a flawless oracle, why does it misplace the Colossus of Rhodes by half a mile or claim the Parthenon had silver roofs? Believers argue these aren't mistakes but clues, deliberate distortions to weed out casual readers. The Rhodes discrepancy, for instance, aligns perfectly with a lost Spartan text describing the statue's original casting site before relocation. As for the silver roofs, recent scans of the Acropolis revealed traces of electrum, a gold-silver alloy used in repairs after a Persian attack. The Codex, it seems, records truths even the ancients forgot. The most compelling evidence may lie in what the text doesn't say. Despite its global scope, there's zero mention of the Americas as a unified landmass, a concept any post-Columbus forger would have included. Instead, it describes islands beyond the sunset, with flora and fauna matching the Caribbean, but framed through a pre-Columbian lens. When linguists analyzed these passages, they found loanwords from Taino, a language extinct by the 1500s, embedded in medieval Latin syntax. Either the Codex's author had access to lost indigenous knowledge, or this is the most meticulous hoax in history, anticipating linguistic discoveries by 5 centuries. So where does the truth lie? Perhaps not in absolutes, but in the Codex's very resistance to categorization. Its pages hold just enough verifiable miracles to defy dismissal, just enough ambiguities to sustain doubt. In that tension, it becomes something more fascinating than either hoax or holy grail. A mirror reflecting how fiercely we cling to certainty when faced with the inexplicable. Because if the Codex is genuine, it rewrites history, and if it's fake, its creator was a genius whose methods we still can't unravel. Either way, the mystery is far from solved. The missing pages of the Multilingual Codex aren't just gaps in parchment, they're black holes in history, sucking in theories and spitting out riddles. Nearly a third of the manuscript vanished under mysterious circumstances, and the fragments left behind hint at secrets explosive enough to warrant their disappearance. Take the torn edge of Folio 72, where a single surviving phrase in Mongolian script reads, "The golden wolf sleeps beneath," a line that's fueled centuries of speculation about Genghis Khan's lost tomb. Historians note the phrasing matches funeral directives from the secret history of the Mongols, a text so closely guarded that violators were put to death. Could the Codex have preserved a forbidden clue to the conqueror's burial site, only to have it ripped out by someone who knew its power? Then there's the alchemy angle. A 19th century restorer discovered faint stains on the binding thread near the missing section's residue that tested positive for mercury and gold nanoparticles. These aren't typical bookmaking materials. They're the hallmarks of chrysopoeia, the medieval obsession with transmuting base metals into gold. The timing of the page's disappearance is telling. They were last accounted for in 1689, the peak of Europe's alchemical frenzy, when noblemen and charlatans alike hunted for the philosopher's stone. A letter from Isaac Newton's private correspondence mentions a polyglot manuscript containing the lunar calculus, a phrase alchemists used for silver to gold conversion. Was the Codex's most dangerous knowledge smuggled into the hands of history's greatest minds? But the most chilling clues lie in what wasn't erased. Infrared scans reveal indentations on pages adjacent to the missing folios, ghostly impressions left by a scribe's quill pressing through now lost sheets. One cluster of marks forms a perfect Fibonacci spiral, a mathematical pattern linked to sacred geometry. Another shows a constellation map with Orion's belt elongated, an anomaly astronomers say only occurs every 26,000 years. These aren't random doodles, they're breadcrumbs left by whoever excised the pages, as if to say, this is what you're not allowed to see. The Vatican's silence speaks volumes. In 1734, a Jesuit scholar named Father Matteo Rix, I was caught smuggling a bundle of vellum sheets out of Rome, reportedly shouting, "They cannot bury the sky." Before being dragged to the dungeons, the sheets were never recovered, but Rix's trial records note he'd been translating a pagan text with the power to unmake mountains. Fast forward to 2017, when archivists digitizing the Vatican's suppressed manuscripts found a ledger entry for 32 folios of Egyptian origin, transferred to the Pope's private library in 1735, the exact number of pages missing from the Codex. Perhaps the truth isn't in what the lost pages contained, but why they were removed. A scrap of marginalia in the surviving text, written in cipher, translates to, "The first key opens the door. The second drowns the keyholder," a warning, a threat, or instructions for handling knowledge too volatile for any one era to hold. Until those pages surface, if they ever do, we're left tracing shadows on the wall, guessing at the shape of the light that cast them. The Multilingual Codex isn't just an artifact, it's a cultural lightning rod, sparking everything from blockbuster adventures to wild conspiracy boards. Think about it, a single manuscript wrapped in mystery, predicting lost cities like some ancient GPS. It's no wonder Hollywood can't resist. The Codex's fingerprints are all over Indiana Jones's Grail diary, the cryptic maps in National Treasure, even the arcane riddles of Tomb Raider. But here's the twist. Those fictional treasures feel tame compared to the Codex's real-life prophecies. While Indy chased the Ark, this book was quietly pointing archaeologists to actual gold. What makes it so irresistible? There's a primal itch the Codex scratches, a longing for worlds just beyond our reach. Lost cities, forgotten empires, they're the ultimate what if. The Codex feeds that fantasy, but with a tantalizing twist. It's real, or at least parts of it are. That ambiguity is catnip for storytellers and theorists alike. Look at how Dan Brown's novels riff on the idea of hidden knowledge guarded by secret societies. The Codex mirrors that trope, but with a spine of verifiable truth. When a page accurately describes a jungle temple centuries before its discovery, it blurs the line between history and legend, leaving us wondering, how much more is out there? Then there's the conspiracy angle. Dive into online forums and you'll find threads dissecting the Codex's celestial chariots as UFO blueprints or its DNA like helix sketch as proof of ancient genetic engineering. Some claim the Vatican's missing pages hold earth-shattering revelations, suppressed tech, pre-Adamite civilizations, even time travel formulas. Skeptics roll their eyes, but the fervor isn't random. The Codex taps into a deeper unease, that history's official record is incomplete, perhaps deliberately. Whether it's aliens or Atlantis, people crave narratives that upend the textbook version of the past. The Codex, with its mix of precision and inexplicable gaps, becomes the perfect Rorschach test, but strip away the hype, and the Codex's real power might be simpler. It's a mirror. When we obsess over its prophecies, we're really wrestling with our own place in time. If a medieval scribe could map ruins they'd never seen, what does that say about human intuition? About the threads of knowledge that slip through generations, only to resurface when we're ready. The Codex doesn't just offer answers, it asks us how much we're willing to believe. And in an age of deepfakes and AI, that question feels more urgent than ever. Perhaps that's why it endures, not because it solves mysteries, but because it keeps them alive. Every generation finds its own codex, some lost text, some viral theory that promises to rewrite everything. The specifics change, but the craving doesn't. We want to believe there's more to the story, and as long as the Codex's pages keep whispering, we'll keep listening. The moment the Multilingual Codex stepped into the spotlight, it dragged a moral minefield along with it. Think about it, this isn't just some dusty relic locked behind museum glass. It's a living, breathing roadmap to treasures and sacred sites. And where there's treasure, there are treasure hunters. In 2021, Honduran authorities arrested a team of looters armed with drones and metal detectors, their backpacks stuffed with printouts of the Codex's jungle temple passages. They weren't scholars, they weren't archaeologists, they were prospectors in it for the gold, willing to bulldoze through ancient altars if it meant pocketing a few artifacts. This is the dark side of the Codex's power. When knowledge becomes a weapon, who gets to wield it? But the dilemma cuts deeper than black market auctions. For indigenous communities, the Codex isn't just controversial, it's personal. When researchers used its coordinates to uncover Paititi's ruins, local Machiginga elders protested that the manuscript's very existence violated sacred traditions. These were never meant to be written down, one leader told National Geographic. Our ancestors spoke these secrets only in ceremony to those ready to hear them. The Codex, in their eyes, is less a discovery than a theft, a colonial-era violation frozen in parchment. And they have a point. Many of its so-called prophecies about Mesoamerican and Andean sites were likely extracted under duress by missionaries who then erased the original oral traditions. Now, the same communities whose knowledge was stolen centuries ago watch as outsiders profit from their ancestors' whispers. The academic world isn't blind to these tensions. In 2023, the Society for American Archaeology revised its ethics guidelines, requiring any codex-based excavation to include indigenous oversight. It's a start, but it doesn't undo the damage already done. Take the case of the singing aqueducts in Honduras. After researchers published the Codex's description of the harmonic water system, a German tech firm patented the acoustic engineering principles, locking the Lenca people out of profits from their own ancestral innovation. Legal battles are still raging, but the message is clear. Without guardrails, the Codex's revelations risk repeating history's oldest pattern, extraction disguised as enlightenment. Yet there's a counterargument simmering beneath the outrage. What if the Codex, for all its fraught origins, is finally forcing museums and governments to confront long-ignored claims? In Peru, the discovery of the Black Lake City led to the repatriation of 68 artifacts from Berlin's Ethnological Museum, their return justified by the Codex's proof of their ceremonial context. For once, the manuscript became a tool for restitution rather than plunder. Similarly, when Australian Aboriginal elders recognized star law in the Codex's Greek passages, it sparked the first formal collaboration between Noongar astronomers and European universities, a partnership that's now rewriting textbooks on indigenous astronomy. The truth is, the Codex holds up a mirror to our own contradictions. We condemn the looters, yet crowd-fund expeditions that strip-mine history for clicks. We champion indigenous rights, yet balk when communities demand control over discoveries made on their land. Maybe the real test isn't whether we can decipher the Codex's secrets, but whether we're brave enough to face what its pages say about us. Because every time we turn a leaf, we're not just reading history, we're writing the next chapter. And this time, the world is watching. The Multilingual Codex isn't alone in its mystery. It's part of an elite club of ancient texts that refuse to surrender their secrets. Take the Voynich manuscript, that cryptic 15th century puzzle filled with botanical illustrations no one can identify, and a script that's defied every cryptographer's best efforts. At first glance, it shares the Codex's aura of impenetrability, but the differences are striking. Where the Voynich seems deliberately obfuscated, its symbols possibly invented to conceal rather than communicate, the Codex hides its truths in plain sight, weaving them through recognizable languages and maps. One feels like a locked door, the other, a labyrinth where the keys are scattered but findable. Then there's the Dead Sea Scrolls, those 2,000-year-old Hebrew texts that rewrote our understanding of biblical history. Like the Codex, they're a patchwork of languages: Aramaic, Greek, even cryptic, angelic scripts. But while the scrolls were hidden away in desert caves, likely to protect them from Roman destruction, the Codex's journey was far more deliberate. It wasn't stashed for safekeeping, it was passed hand to hand across continents, as if its creators intended it to travel. The scrolls tell a single, sacred story. The Codex, a chorus of them, harmonizing across time and space. The real outlier might be the Emerald Tablet, that legendary alchemical text attributed to Hermes Trismegistus. Its famous maxim, "as above, so below," echoes the Codex's blend of celestial and terrestrial knowledge. Both texts hint at a unified theory of the universe, where geography and astronomy are intertwined. But here's the twist: the Emerald Tablet's wisdom is distilled into cryptic aphorisms, while the Codex delivers actionable details, coordinates, architectural sketches, even material compositions. One is a philosopher's riddle, the other, a field guide for rediscovering lost worlds. Yet the most haunting parallel lies with the Rohank Codex, a Hungarian manuscript so baffling that scholars still debate whether its script is an elaborate cipher or an invented language. Like our Codex, it mixes religious imagery with seemingly technical diagrams, blurring the line between devotion and data. But while the Rohank remains stubbornly silent, its illustrations offering no clear key, the Multilingual Codex leaks revelations like a sieve. Every few years, another of its predictions snaps into focus with a new archaeological find. It's as if one text dares you to understand it, while the other waits for you to catch up. What sets the Codex apart isn't just its accuracy, but its audacity. These other texts guard their secrets like dragons hoarding gold. The Codex flings its treasures into the open, trusting or perhaps challenging future generations to recognize their worth. In a world of mysteries that taunt us with silence, this manuscript shouts across the centuries, and the strangest part, we're only beginning to hear its voice. Time travel, the ultimate cheat code for historians. Could the Multilingual Codex's uncanny accuracy be the work of a visitor from another era, jotting down archaeological discoveries before they happened? It's a theory that straddles the line between sci-fi and serious scholarship, and here's why it won't die. The Codex doesn't just predict sites, it nails details no medieval scholar could have guessed. Take its description of the singing aqueducts in Paititi. The harmonic resonance of those waterways wasn't scientifically understood until the 1980s, yet the text specifies their pitch shifts during monsoon rains. How either someone in the 1400s had acoustics knowledge centuries ahead of their time, or they'd stood in that jungle listening. But let's play devil's advocate. If a time traveler authored the Codex, why the errors? Why misplace the Colossus of Rhodes or fumble the Parthenon's roof material? A true chrononaut would have aced every detail. Unless, of course, the mistakes are deliberate breadcrumbs to avoid contaminating the timeline. Historians note that the Codex's errors often align with alternate historical records, like a Spartan scroll placing the Colossus foundry farther inland. Could these discrepancies be clues left by someone navigating the butterfly effect, carefully tweaking facts to avoid paradoxes? The physics angle is even thornier. Modern theories like quantum retrocausality suggest time might not flow linearly. Information could theoretically leak backward, influencing the past without a physical traveler. The Codex's mix of precision and vagueness fits this model. Its star charts match ancient sky views exactly, but its prophecies read like garbled transmissions. Imagine a medieval monk inadvertently receiving fragmented data bursts from future digs, scribbling what he didn't fully comprehend. Yet the biggest hurdle isn't science, it's motive. If you could hop through time, why spend your days cataloging ruins instead of preventing plagues or stopping wars? Unless, of course, the Codex was never meant for us. Its jumbled languages and ciphers suggest an audience that doesn't exist yet, readers who'll need its maps in some future crisis. Maybe the time traveler wasn't a tourist, but a survivalist, packing a guidebook for a dark age we haven't reached. The sobering truth: time travel is a funhouse mirror for our own obsessions. We project onto the Codex what we fear most, that history isn't fixed, that knowledge is fragile, that somewhere in the past or future someone's watching. But strip away the paradoxes and you're left with a humbler, stranger possibility. The manuscript's creators didn't need a DeLorean to see beyond their era. Just an unbroken chain of human curiosity stretching further than we've dared to imagine. After all, isn't that the real magic? Not bending time, but bridging it. Buried in the Codex's most weathered pages are passages that don't just describe places, they describe worlds in flux. One entry, penned in a shaky hand, depicts the Sahara not as a sea of dunes, but as a land of lakes where crocodiles bask. At first glance, it reads like fantasy until geologists pointed to sediment cores proving the Sahara was a verdant savanna as recently as 5,000 years ago. The text's chilling precision doesn't stop there. It notes the lakes vanished when the winds changed, a detail matching modern climate models showing how shifts in Earth's orbit dried the region. But here's what haunts researchers. The author doesn't frame this as ancient history. They write as an eyewitness, describing parched riverbeds and starving herds with visceral dread. Then there's the frozen river paradox. A folio stained with what might be saltwater damage recounts a journey across a Thames of ice in medieval Britain. A claim long dismissed as hyperbole until ice core studies revealed the Thames froze solid at least 23 times between the 14th and 19th centuries. The Codex's account aligns with the worst of these events, the Great Frost of 1683, when frost fairs sprawled across the immobilized river. But the text adds a haunting footnote: the ice wept blood. Scientists now recognize this as a description of cryoconite, a dark dust that accelerates melting, staining glaciers with ruddy streaks. A phenomenon only documented in modern glaciology, yet scribbled in the margins of a 600-year-old manuscript. The real bombshell lies in the Codex's structure. Unlike other medieval texts that treat climate as divine punishment, this manuscript charts environmental shifts with clinical detachment. Tables in faded ink correlate volcanic eruptions with failed harvests, star charts annotated with notes on monsoon delays. One diagram shows a tree ring sequence so accurate, dendrochronologists at Columbia University initially assumed it was a modern forgery, but the vellum checked out. These aren't random observations, they're data. Which raises an unsettling question. Was the Codex's author merely recording history or anticipating repetition? A passage in cipher-heavy Latin warns of cycles where the earth coughs fire and the skies grow lean, followed by a list of survival strategies: storing grain in volcanic ash to deter pests, planting drought-resistant barley near river bends. Instructions that feel less like folklore and more like a manual for weathering collapse. Nowhere is this prescience clearer than in the Dead Cities section. The text describes abandoned Mesopotamian settlements, their ruins choked by salt, a telltale sign of irrigation-induced soil degradation. Modern archaeology confirms these sites were indeed lost to salinity crises around 2200 BC. But the Codex frames their fall as preventable, blaming kings who demanded wheat from barren earth, a stark parallel to today's draining of aquifers and over-farmed plains. Even more jarring, the scribe's conclusion: no empire outlasts its soil. As climatologists pore over these passages, a pattern emerges. The Codex doesn't just document climate change, it maps the social unraveling that follows. Lists of refugee routes mirror modern migration projections. Accounts of plague outbreaks following crop failures read like grim previews of pandemic models. Some researchers argue the manuscript is a Rosetta Stone for understanding how civilizations fracture under environmental stress. Others hear in its brittle pages something more urgent, not just a record of the past, but a rehearsal for futures we're racing toward. Because if the Codex's creators could see the threads connecting drought to war, famine to collapse, threads we're only now tracing with supercomputers, then its greatest prophecy might be the one we're living. And its silent question: will we heed its warnings or become another entry in its litany of lost worlds? The Multilingual Codex spent centuries as the academic world's embarrassing cousin, dismissed as a hoax, a madman's ramblings, or worse, a colonialist fantasy. Professors would smirk at its mentions in conferences, and graduate students daring to cite it risked their advisors' scowls. But somewhere between the rediscovery of Paititi and those hauntingly accurate Antarctic maps, something shifted. The laughter died down, lecterns were leaned on. Today, you'll find the Codex dissected in ivy-covered halls from Oxford to Kyoto, its pages scanned, its ink analyzed, its prophecies debated in peer-reviewed journals. This isn't just acceptance, it's a full-blown scholarly revolution. Take Dr. Elena Voss at Cambridge, a linguist who built her career decrypting the Codex's jumbled dialects. We used to treat it like a crossword puzzle, she admits, adjusting her glasses in a sunlit office lined with replica pages. Now, it's a Rosetta Stone for lost languages. Her team's breakthrough came when they realized the manuscript's gibberish sections weren't random. They were phonetic renderings of oral traditions, transcribed by scribes who didn't fully understand them. That epiphany led to the rediscovery of the Chocquoquirao cloud language, a dialect declared extinct until the Codex's clues guided linguists to remote Peruvian elders who still whispered its phrases. Across the Atlantic, MIT's Dr. Raj Patel approaches the text as an engineer would. Forget the mysticism, this is a technical manual, he insists, pointing to a page where geometric diagrams overlay city plans. His lab proved the angles match seismic stress points in ancient Mesoamerican pyramids, suggesting the Codex didn't just describe architecture, it encoded anti-earthquake engineering. These builders knew things we're only relearning now, Patel says, tapping a simulation showing how Teotihuacan's pyramids dampen tremors through precisely calculated slopes. The Codex preserved that knowledge when the builders' names were forgotten. Yet not all academics have embraced the manuscript. Harvard's Dr. Marcus Wellesley remains its loudest critic, arguing in a blistering 2023 paper that its hits are statistical inevitabilities. Describe enough cities vaguely and some will match ruins, he scoffs. But even he concedes the Codex's carbon dating and ink chemistry are frustratingly authentic, leaving him in the ironic position of having to prove an ancient artifact is too accurate to be real. The real turning point came when Yale's archaeology department did the unthinkable. They let the Codex guide a dig. Using its star-aligned coordinates, students uncovered a buried Viking outpost in Newfoundland no sagas had ever mentioned. The clincher, the site's layout matched the manuscript sketch of wooden halls facing the winter sun, a detail only visible in December solstice light. That's when I stopped calling it a text and started calling it a colleague, admits Professor Ingrid Sorensen, who led the expedition. What changed academia's mind wasn't just evidence, but methodology. The Codex forced historians to collaborate across silos, astronomers decoding its star charts, botanists identifying extinct plants from its marginalia, even AI specialists training algorithms to spot patterns in its chaos. This interdisciplinary hunger has birthed an entirely new field, paleosynthesis, the study of how premodern cultures integrated science, myth, and observation. Now, the ultimate irony, the same institutions that once mocked the Codex are locked in a quiet war over its secrets. When Stanford's Digital Humanities Lab announced they'd traced its vellum to a defunct Moroccan monastery, the Sorbonne retaliated by leaking their discovery of matching ink in a Sicilian alchemist's diary. Meanwhile, the University of Tokyo is quietly training neural networks to reconstruct its missing pages, treating each tear and stain as a cryptographic challenge. The Codex's academic redemption isn't just about validating a weird old book, it's about humility. For centuries, we assumed medieval minds couldn't grasp global connections or long-term climate patterns. The manuscript's precision forces a reckoning. Maybe the Dark Ages weren't so dark after all, or as Dr. Voss likes to tell her students, genius isn't a modern invention. Sometimes it's just waiting for us to catch up. X-ray fluorescence imaging has peeled back the Codex's surface like an archaeologist's trowel, revealing secrets buried for centuries beneath its faded ink. When scientists first aimed the scanner's beam at a seemingly blank margin, the machine detected ghostly traces of iron and copper, residue from ink that had long since vanished from human sight. But what emerged wasn't just stray scribbles. It was an intricate celestial map, its lines so precise they could only have been drawn by someone who'd studied the night sky with unnerving intimacy. The hidden chart plots the positions of Orion, Sirius, and the Pleiades not as they appeared in the medieval era when the Codex was penned, but as they would have shone during the Bronze Age, nearly 3,000 years earlier. This revelation sent shockwaves through the academic world. How could a 14th century scribe have accessed astronomical data from an epoch before parchment even existed? The answer lies in the ink itself. Spectral analysis shows the hidden layer contains a unique blend of manganese and zinc, a formula matching Egyptian ink recipes from the reign of Ramses II. This suggests the star chart wasn't an original creation, but a meticulous copy of a far older document, possibly transcribed from a crumbling papyrus or temple wall. The implications rewrite history. Somewhere along the Nile, Bronze Age scholars were tracking celestial movements with accuracy rivaling modern planetariums, and their knowledge survived long enough to be smuggled into this medieval manuscript. But the real bombshell came when astrophysicists overlaid the chart with ancient climate records. The positions correlate with a rare planetary alignment around 1150 BCE, a period when dendrochronology shows catastrophic droughts ravaged the Mediterranean. The Codex's margin notes, now visible through multispectral imaging, describe this configuration as the hunger stars, linking their appearance to crop failures and rivers running backward. Contemporary Hittite tablets tell of famine so severe that mothers abandoned children, while Egyptian murals depict priests offering gold to the gods for rain. The Codex didn't just preserve star lore, it encoded an early warning system, a way to predict ecological collapse written in the language of the cosmos. Yet the most tantalizing layer remains untranslated. Beneath the star chart, the X-ray fluorescence detected faint symbols resembling linear A, the undeciphered script of Minoan Crete. These aren't random scratches, they form repeating clusters that mathematician Dr. Lena Petrosian believes could be mathematical notation. The patterns suggest lunar eclipse cycles, she explains, pointing to sequences matching the Saros cycle, an 18-year period between identical eclipses not formally documented until Babylonian times. If correct, this would mean Minoan astronomers understood celestial mechanics 1,000 years before the Greeks coined the word eclipse. The technology revealing these secrets is as extraordinary as the discoveries themselves. Portable XRF scanners, originally developed for mining prospecting, can now distinguish between ink layers thinner than a human hair. Advanced algorithms then reconstruct the hidden text by analyzing how different elements absorb radiation, a process akin to listening for echoes in a canyon of time. At the University of Pennsylvania's lab, conservators have even employed terahertz imaging, a technique that bounces electromagnetic waves off the vellum to create 3D maps of subsurface ink without touching the fragile pages. What emerges from this high-tech archaeology isn't just a palimpsest of lost knowledge, it's a blueprint for how civilizations guard their most vital discoveries. The Codex's creators didn't merely record the stars, they buried the data beneath layers of script, like a time capsule meant to survive wars and book burnings. Now, as we reassemble their puzzle with tools they couldn't have imagined, we're left with a humbling thought. Perhaps the true message of the Codex isn't in its words or charts, but in its very existence, proof that knowledge, no matter how fragile, finds a way to endure. What if the Multilingual Codex isn't just a book, but a bridge, a conduit to something far stranger than lost cities or forgotten stars? Some researchers are daring to ask whether its uncanny accuracy hints at a deeper, almost mystical connection, the possibility of collective memory. This isn't about dusty libraries or lone geniuses scribbling in isolation. It's the radical notion that human knowledge might pool like groundwater beneath the surface of individual minds, accessible to those who know how to tap into it. The idea isn't entirely new. Anthropologists have long studied how oral traditions preserve details with eerie precision across generations, like the Aboriginal songlines mapping landscapes untouched for millennia, or the Norse sagas recounting volcanic eruptions centuries after the fact. But the Codex takes this further. Its descriptions of Paititi's harmonic aqueducts or Antarctica's ice-free coasts aren't just folklore, they're technical manuals masquerading as prophecy. How one theory points to the work of psychologist Carl Jung, who proposed the concept of the collective unconscious, a reservoir of ancestral memories shared by all humanity. Could the Codex's creators have somehow dipped into this well, drawing up blueprints their own eyes never saw? Skeptics counter that Jung's theories are poetic, not scientific. Yet modern neuroscience offers a tantalizing parallel. Studies on shared cognition show that tightly knit groups like teams of surgeons or orchestral musicians can anticipate each other's actions with near telepathic synchronicity. Their brains literally sync up, now scale that across centuries. If medieval scribes, indigenous elders, and nomadic traders formed a kind of neural network, exchanging fragments of knowledge along silk roads and pilgrimage routes, might the Codex be the hard drive where those whispers coalesced? The most compelling evidence lies in the manuscript's errors. Its mistakes often mirror alternate historical accounts, like placing the Colossus of Rhodes inland, where Spartan texts claim it was first cast. These aren't random blunders, they're fingerprints of competing memories, conflicting versions of truth preserved in the collective psyche. Even the Codex's jumbled languages support this. Like a dream where logic bends, its pages mix dialects and scripts as if the barriers between cultures were porous, its authors channeling voices they didn't fully understand. But here's the twist: collective memory doesn't require mysticism. Linguists note that the Codex's prophecies align with trade hub gossip. Venetian merchants spun tales of Asian cities paved with gold. Arab geographers mapped African kingdoms from second-hand accounts. Over centuries, exaggeration hardened into fact. Yet that doesn't explain the manuscript's pinpoint accuracy on details like the pink hue of Angkor Wat sandstone, a trait only visible at dawn, unlikely to survive Chinese whispers. Unless, of course, the Codex's creators weren't just collectors but synthesizers, piecing together shards of truth from a mosaic of sources now lost to time. The debate crystallizes around one chilling passage, a description of the Library of Alexandria's destruction, written in a dialect extinct before the library burned. How Jungians argue its ancestral trauma echoing through the ages. Pragmatists suggest a lucky guess by a scholar who knew how empires purged knowledge. But perhaps the answer lies between. The Codex may be neither oracle nor hoax, but something rarer, proof that human minds, when woven together across time, can reconstruct truths no single lifetime could hold. After all, isn't that what history is? A story we remember together, even when we've forgotten why. Deep in the Codex's most cryptic, untranslated passages lies a single phrase that sparked fevered speculation: the golden city beneath the sands. Unlike its other prophecies, this section isn't illustrated with maps or star charts, just a series of numerical sequences and descriptions of a metropolis, where towers sink like teeth into the earth. For decades, scholars dismissed it as another Atlantis-style allegory. Then came the satellite imagery. In 2022, radar scans of the Eastern Sahara revealed anomalous geometric patterns beneath the dunes, structures too symmetrical to be natural, spanning an area larger than modern Paris. Their layout matches the Codex's numerical sequences with unsettling precision, as if the numbers were never riddles at all, but coordinates waiting for the right technology to crack them. The Codex's description of this buried city defies every assumption about the Sahara's history. It speaks of a place where rivers ran upside down, a poetic turn until hydrologists realized it could describe qanats, the ancient underground irrigation tunnels used in Persia and Oman. Even more startling is the claim that the city's builders worshipped the rain that never fell, crafting statues from a porous stone that drank the night's breath. Recent excavations in Mauritania's vanished lakes have uncovered similar moisture-trapping sculptures, their surfaces pocked with microscopic channels that condense fog into water. Could the Codex be preserving knowledge from a green Sahara when the desert was a savanna crisscrossed by rivers? But the real mystery isn't just what the Codex describes, it's what it warns. A passage in cipher-laden Coptic mentions a sleeping sickness that felled the city's inhabitants, their bodies buried in chambers lined with black salt. In 2023, archaeologists working near the radar anomalies discovered collapsed catacombs filled with natron, an Egyptian preservative, alongside skeletons bearing lesions consistent with mycotoxin poisoning. This suggests the city didn't just fall to drought, it may have been abandoned after grain stores were contaminated by deadly molds, a scenario eerily foreshadowed in the Codex's cautionary tales. What chills researchers most, though, is the manuscript's timing. Carbon dating places its Sahara passages squarely in the 1400 centuries after the region's last great cities like Garama faded into dust. How could a medieval scribe have known details modern science is only now uncovering? One theory points to the nomadic Tuareg, whose oral histories speak of a veiled metropolis swallowed by dunes. The Codex's numerals align with Tuareg star navigation songs still sung today, hinting at a collaboration between desert wayfarers and manuscript keepers. Now, as ground-penetrating radar peels back the Sahara's secrets layer by layer, the Codex's most tantalizing possibility comes into focus. We may be standing on the threshold of a discovery that rewrites African history. Not as a continent of isolated kingdoms, but as a nexus of forgotten connectivity where desert caravans traded with river empires and knowledge flowed along routes we're only beginning to trace. The Codex doesn't just hint at lost cities, it whispers of lost networks, of a world far more intertwined than our textbooks ever imagined. And beneath those endless dunes, an entire chapter of human ingenuity may be waiting to resurface. In a dimly lit Berlin apartment, a former cybersecurity specialist named Klaus von Adler kneels before a fireproof safe, his fingers trembling as they trace the edges of a leather-bound replica. This isn't just a hobby, it's a vow. Klaus is one of the Codex's self-appointed sentinels, a growing network of guardians who have dedicated their lives to preserving the manuscript's secrets while keeping its most dangerous revelations contained. Their ranks read like the cast of a spy thriller, a retired Vatican archivist who whispers about pages that burn the unworthy, a Navajo linguist decoding the text's encrypted indigenous prophecies, even a reclusive tech billionaire funding underground scans to create a decentralized backup should the original vanish. What unites them isn't just obsession, it's fear. Take Sister Lucia dos Santos, the 87-year-old nun who's spent 6 decades comparing the Codex's star charts to apocalyptic visions reported by Portuguese shepherds at Fatima. Her tiny convent in Coimbra houses a locked cabinet filled with notes linking the manuscript's Great Fire in the Sky passage to modern satellite data on solar flares. This isn't about the past, she insists, her voice barely louder than the rustling pages. It's about warnings we're too arrogant to hear. Across the globe in Kyoto, former game developer Hiroshi Tanaka takes a more technological approach. His collective of white hat hackers has created an AI trained to detect and block online auctions of Codex fragments after a surge of black market dealers targeted indigenous communities for supplementary pages rumored to exist. The Guardians' motivations are as varied as their methods. For some, like ex-Marine-turned-survivalist James Mercer, the Codex is a literal survival guide. His heavily redacted manual, Preparing for the Unseen, circulated only among trusted subscribers, cross-references the manuscript's climate prophecies with Pentagon reports on food scarcity. Others, like Moroccan historian Dr. Amina Belkadi, see their role as reparations. Her team has returned 4 looted Codex-related artifacts to Timbuktu's libraries, arguing that the text's true meaning can't be unlocked without restoring its stolen context. You wouldn't read a symphony by tearing out every third note, she tells critics, yet the most enigmatic protector might be the so-called librarian, an anonymous figure who first surfaced on dark web forums in 2019. Their posts, always in 14th century Venetian dialect, claim the Codex we know is merely volume 1 of 9, with the remaining texts hidden in a global network of living libraries, people who have memorized sections verbatim to avoid detection. Whether myth or reality, the librarian's warnings echo through the Guardian's ranks. The Codex's full revelation could trigger what they call the unraveling, not a physical catastrophe, but a collapse of humanity's foundational narratives about time, civilization, and our place in history. Perhaps that's why these modern sentinels operate in shadows. In an age of instant information, they've become the unexpected custodians of a radical idea that some knowledge isn't meant to be free but earned. And as governments and corporations increasingly circle the Codex like wolves, its guardians face a harrowing question: are they preserving wisdom or merely delaying the inevitable? The answer may hinge on whether the world is ready to read between the lines of history without losing its way. As we close the Codex's weathered cover, one undeniable truth lingers in the air: history, as we know, it is merely the surface of a far deeper, stranger story. This isn't just about an ancient book predicting ruins or mapping lost cities. It's about the unsettling realization that our ancestors may have grasped connections between stars and stones, between languages and landscapes that we're only now beginning to glimpse. Whether the Codex is a fluke of intuition, a masterpiece of forgotten science, or something beyond our current understanding, its very existence forces us to question the boundaries of knowledge. How many other manuscripts like this have turned to dust in attics or been dismissed as fables? How much of our past remains hidden, not in the ground but in plain sight, waiting for the right eyes to see it? The Codex's legacy isn't just in the ruins it's helped uncover, but in the questions it leaves echoing. Why did its creators go to such lengths to hide truths in plain sight, weaving clues through languages and symbols? Were they protecting knowledge from destruction, or shielding the world from something too volatile to share? And most haunting of all, if they could see so clearly into the future, what might they have known about our present? The answers won't be found in dusty archives alone. They'll emerge in the collaborations between linguists and physicists, between indigenous elders and AI researchers, between the keepers of old wisdom and the pioneers of new tools. This isn't the end of the Codex's story. It's an invitation to look closer at the anomalies in our museums, to listen more carefully to the oral traditions we've labeled myth, to question the timelines we've accepted as gospel. The next chapter won't be written by lone scholars in ivory towers, but by a global community of curious minds. By you, maybe you'll spot a pattern in its star charts that others missed. Maybe you'll recognize a dialect in its margins that connects to your own heritage. Or maybe you'll simply pass its mysteries on, keeping the thread alive for the next generation of seekers. So what do you think? Is the Codex a time capsule, a warning, or a key to doors we've yet to find? Drop your wildest theories in the comments, because history's greatest discoveries often start as whispers between the willing to wonder. And if you've felt that itch, that pull toward the unexplained, don't let it fade. Hit subscribe, because this isn't the last you'll hear of the Codex. New pages are still turning, new technologies are peeling back its secrets, and somewhere out there, another revelation is waiting to snap into focus. The past isn't done speaking. Are you listening?